Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, folks, and hiya, lobster.
And I am your host, / Time Lord wannabe, the brainstormer of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am doing well, or at least as well as can be, given things that Brainstormer knows that I really would rather not talk about on air, because last time I even approached talking about it on air, it nerfed our stream for like 20 minutes, so yeah.
Right. Yeah, I've actually had a fairly okay week, all things considered. So I guess I'm like, yeah. So quick side note, we have like 3 topics to cover. One is the article that we've been covering for the last few weeks. If you want to see the coverage of the other parts, go back to the last few episodes, except for like
we didn't cover it last week because
time.
I did a favor for Brainstormer and got him an article where some asshole was being bitchy about Invincible, and it took up the entire length of the podcast pretty much because it was earth-shatteringly stupid and the guy just wouldn't shut the ever-loving fuck up.
Again, we're only going to cover a small portion of this article and then move on to the next stuff for time reasons. So more than likely we'll just spend like an hour and a half on this article. So, yeah.
But we are still going to slowly but surely pick at the thing because goddamn, the kind of academic woo on display in that article is just so insufferable. Also, we know quite a few people in said article, and they're not in any way white supremacists, so they need to be defended.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the point at hand. We only have like 3 things to cover this week because, again, mainly the bulk of time is going to be devoted to the article that we are.
I suggested doing the Jordan Peterson Red Skull thing, but Brainstormer had no interest, and we're already like 2 weeks behind anyway, so.
Yeah. But we have something kind of good to end on, hopefully.
One hopes and prays.
All right. Let me share this. Share screen. Chrome tab. So this is from Rewriting Ripley in Plain Sight. How white supremacy, misogyny, and hate targeted the Star Wars sequel trilogy and won. Like I said, we've been covering this for the last few weeks. It's a very long article, so it's going to take us a long time to get through this, unfortunately.
Yeah, because somebody basically wrote a research dissertation on his paranoid conspiracy theory. This is the academic equivalent of one of those spider web things in conspiracy theory movies that have like disparate pictures and things like all tied together in a complex web bullshit.
Okay, so I would argue, like, I wanted to read like the previous paragraphs just so we have context, but yeah, this guy likes to talk, so I can't really say we do that.
Didn't we finish off the Gamergate section last time though?
Oh, we
Anyway,
did. I think no, we didn't. We're still on it.
proceed.
Okay. Again, like, yeah. Okay. So, all right. Vox describes these angry internet mobs in air quotations as men's rights activists, white nationalists, and neo-reactionaries. That
Okay, okay. Thing the first. Who in any mountainous range of fucks should give a shit what Vox has to say? Secondly, men's rights advocates are not conservative, let alone in any way adjacent to white supremacy. Most most rights that men's rights advocates fight for are rights that men never historically had the rights to. Like, for example, the end to male circumcision. Because it's fucking genital mutilation. But that's a issue for a different day. And I lost my train of thought entirely. Continue. Jesus.
okay. That Gamergate united around indignation over the inroads that women and minorities have made into video game culture previously dominated by young white men.
What? Okay. Okay. I'm going to have to try my damnedest to maintain some semblance of orderly thought in the face of that level of stupidity. Part the first, Gamergate didn't unite anyone against the inroads of women and minorities in gaming. Not a single person. In fact, many Gamergaters, okay, were women and minorities who didn't want to be pandered to. And I'm speaking as one. I'm speaking as a gay crippled dude who very much self-identifies as part of Gamergate. Thank you very the fuck much. Secondly, the thing people were opposed to was the corruption and lack of ethical standards in games journalism as a result of nepotism and ideological buttressing of people who didn't have the merits to be in the positions they were in, regardless of whether they were men, women, or otherwise. It wasn't women we had a problem with, it was feminism as an ideology. Because feminism as an ideology, okay, does not have a monopoly on women's rights advocacy or women's interests. Many, many women have been gamers and nerds for basically the entire history of those hobbies. And if you don't believe me, just ask the wife of Stan Lee or Karen Berger, who was the editor of DC Vertigo when Neil Gaiman came on the scene in the fucking 80s. Thank you very much. So clearly, and that's not even to throw into the list all the women and minorities who were games designers, and also the fact that the majority of games for a long time in the industry are centered in Japan, and if you consider Asians to be a minority position, then that means that for a long time video games were centered in a minority population. So what the actual fuck are you playing at? Moving on.
Right. Okay. One of the best examples of this is the rise of male supremacist ideology in gaming spaces during Gamergate, led by Mike Chernovich, a First Amendment lawyer who became associated with the event after he offered legal services to Joni. Chernovich has a history of anti-women, anti-trans beliefs. He wrote on his blog Crime and Federalism in 2010 that it is now beyond debate that the culture has shifted. It is.
Bless you.
Thank you. Let me read that. It is now beyond debate that the culture has shifted. It is, or will soon be, a woman's world. Women earn 3 college degrees for every 2 that men earn. Women are overrepresented in managerial capacities. Women have taken over.
Okay. First things first, there are no male supremacist ideologies. None. Not a single one. Not anywhere. Not ever. The closest thing you could potentially call male supremacy would be some of the zanier parts of MGTOW, because some MGTOW go a little bit nuts. But even they don't want male supremacy. They just want to be left the fuck alone, and they don't particularly trust women. And that's on the extreme end of MGTOW. Most MGTOW are just kind of indifferent and want to be left the fuck alone. That's why they're called MGTOW. Because men going their own way, i.e., I'm gonna do this over here, fuck off and leave me alone. Secondly, I don't know and don't care much about Mike Cernovich, but if you are defining the facts and opinions that you laid out in the quote of his shortly thereafter as part of his anti-women status, then you are fucked in the head. There is nothing about any of the data that he just supplied there, most of which is accurate, by the way, that is anti-women. Because women are not a hive mind, for one thing. And for another thing, there is actually something that I would disagree with him on. The advent of it being a woman's world, quote unquote, is not new. Because human beings, right, pretty much since we climbed out of the fucking trees and became human beings, are extremely gynocentric. Why? Because most human beings are raised by their mothers from infancy to adolescence, and then proceed to either socially bond with other women in the case of women, or they romantically bond with women in the case of men. So if you are in any way actually misogynist, you are brain damaged, because there's something that went wrong in the social part of your brain. Human beings, as social animals, are kind of uniquely gynocentric. It means we prioritize the attitudes and subjectivity of women above basically anything else. That's and this has been the case for modern history and beyond. I mean, fuck. Even on the Titanic, you had the notion of women and children first. You want to know why? Because women and children were considered more valuable than men, and men were considered to be duty-bound and honor-bound to sacrifice their own well-being on the behalf of others. And incidentally, I don't think it's much of a stretch to say that if you broke down the category of children into 2 separate categories for, boys and girls, most people would probably prioritize girls over boys. And I say this because the etymology of the word boy actually means servant or slave. Because boys were meant to be useful and grow into men who would be useful. Women, however, get value by virtue of being women because women's subjectivity has always been prioritized over basically anyone else. You dumbass. Moving on.
One of the best examples of this is the rise of male supremacist ideology in gaming spaces during Gamergate, led by Mike Turner. I read that. Sorry.
Yeah, that was the thing we just got done responding to.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to move the damn thing. So okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He frequently wrote about how to avoid false, in air quotes, rape claims, and that women exist for man's, well, in brackets, man's sexual pleasure. The SPLC has documented many examples of this, including a tweet where Chernovich states, "After abusing a girl, I always immediately send a text and save her reply." What? I feel like we need more context for that because I feel
it's possible he was just telling an edgy joke. I suspect that that was just an edgy joke, but irregardless, okay. I don't agree with him on the sense of men's sexual pleasure, but I find it extremely telling that you put the word false in air quotes when discussing false rape accusations, because that implies that no women ever lie about rape, or that no one ever lies about rape, and that's just stupid. Any crime has a certain proportion of incident reports that are false, even just by sheer, mistaken attribution. But in the case of rape, because it is such a egregious crime, there is a certain amount of clout to it, i.e., when a woman, or I'd like to say, or when anyone, but let's face it, a lot of people don't even acknowledge the existence of male victims of women in that instance. And usually when they do acknowledge male victims, it's victims of other men vis-a-vis prison rape. But that's a conversation for a different day. False accusations do happen, and implying that they don't happen inverts the burden of proof. It's literally whoever is being accused of this is guilty until proven innocent. If you don't acknowledge the fact that it is possible and likely for someone to possibly be lying. That's why we have an evidence-based fucking judicial system and a reasonable doubt standard of justice. Because we don't live in a society where you can just accuse somebody of something on the assumption that you're telling the absolute unvarnished truth or are never mistaken, and can just throw somebody in a dungeon somewhere. The entire premise of our legal system and our judicial system is based on the idea that you should be able to defend yourself and you shouldn't be assumed to be guilty in any court, especially not the court of public opinion, unless it can be demonstrated as such. Dumbass. But again, I don't know and don't really care who Mike Cernovich is. I think vaguely he might be some sort of conservative pundit. But again, I must point out the fact that just because someone is an MRA or just because someone cares about men's issues does not mean they're conservative, because many of the rights talked about by men's rights advocates and many of the issues talked about by men's rights advocates are things that have never historically been addressed, and so there is nothing necessarily there to conserve. But there is a degree of progress in the issue, in the sense that they want rights addressed that have never been addressed before, which if you look at the affixture of the word progressive, that would be progress, getting something addressed that's never been addressed before. I'm not saying, therefore, men's rights advocacy is therefore progressive, but I am saying it doesn't fit in the conservative box. It's quite possible that men's rights advocacy doesn't fit in any box, because the paradigms are all framed in such a way as to completely ignore the possibility of men's issues. Because, again, human beings are naturally gynocentric, and therefore we prioritize women's threat narratives more than we do men's threat narratives, because we view men as utilities and women as essentially bundles of sensitivity and emotion, for lack of a better phrase, at the moment. Moving forward.
Using the following he built up through Gamergate. Chernovich published a Gorilla Mindset, which propelled male supremacist ideas into the mainstream by detailing how men should embrace their gorilla nature to find dominance and power. Again, I feel like
that doesn't sound to me like that doesn't sound to me like male supremacy. That sounds like a weird, possibly overly conservative bastardization of evolutionary psychology, if anything.
I was going to say that I feel like you just need more context because I feel like it's more cherry picking.
Yeah, it's painting him in the worst possible light. But again, for all I know, Mike Cernovich might be the straw man of a straw man of a straw man of a tradcon that this person makes them out to be. Given how much this person doesn't understand or actively misappropriate other aspects of things to reframe and recontextualize, I don't trust this person to report on Mike Cernovich. But yeah, in that particular instance, it seems like this Mike Cernovich guy might just be a whiny tradcon trying in vain to say something related to evolutionary psychology, which is entirely likely, in my opinion. And once again, I just want to point this out, opposing feminism is not male supremacist because feminism does not have a monopoly on women's rights, interests, or issues, or addressing those things. And many of the people in Gamergate were women and minorities, you asshat. Moving on.
Sorry, give me a sec. Scratch my head. All right. Cernovich went on to push the Pizzagate conspiracy, a conspiracy created in the lead up to Trump's 2016 election. As president of the United States, the Democrats were operating a child sex ring inside a DC pizzeria called Comet Ping Pong. Conspiracy developed into domestic terror threat QA and QAnon.
QAnon. It's a variation on 4chan.
Okay, a conspiracy theory which alleges that Satan worshipping pedophiles hold high positions of power within government and threaten former President Donald Trump.
Okay, well, I hate to be this guy, but yes, Pizzagate may very well have been a stupid concept, and it was, by the way. But for one thing, I think it might have been based mostly on a 4chan joke, and for another thing, shortly after the whole Pizzagate fiasco died down, the Epstein controversy happened, and we did find that there is a disproportionate amount of people in Hollywood and in politics who are doing an unnecessary degree of kitty fiddling. And whether they're satanic aligned at all or not doesn't really matter. The primary issue appears to be that people in positions of power and authority are doing a disproportionate amount of kitty fiddling, which is just wrong. I'm not saying that therefore some kind of vast conspiracy, but I am saying don't act as though as backwards as those theories might be, they don't at least have a kernel of truth, or at least might have a context to them that makes them make at least some degree of sense. And also, aren't your side the side that's supposed to be all hashtag Me Too crazy? And isn't hashtag Me Too supposed to be born out of the Hollywood practice of doing casting couches with underage children, both male and female? So is it really so far fetched in a context that the Epstein scandal exists and the hashtag Me Too scandal exists that there might be some cabal of people in higher positions of authority doing some unnecessarily creepy things with children? Because at least that part of the notion seems to be true. The other stuff is wrong and probably always has been wrong, because anytime the term Satanism is applied to anything, it's 99% of the time just people being edgy, and has nothing to do with anything relating to the actual left-hand path, by the way, but never mind.
You
Moving
done?
forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel part of me thought you might go on a spiel with the COVID.
Yeah. I might on some other topic, but not. There's just too much of this shit to get through. So
Right.
I'll
Fair
let
enough.
you go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Chernovich was not the only alt right associated later to rise in power during Gamergate. Milo Yiannopoulos, an infamous provocateur known for shameless misogyny, anti-Semitism, and racism, was given the green light by Bannon as an editor.
Stop. For fuck's sake. Milo is Jewish, you dumbass. You can't be that stupid. He just called out a gay Jewish man for being anti-Semitic. The fuck. Okay, continue. Sorry, that broke me.
Okay. Well, let me start off at the beginning so we have the full context there.
Mhm.
Milo Yiannopoulos, an infamous provocateur known for shameless misogyny, anti-Semitism, and racism, was given the green light by Bannon as an editor at Breitbart to use the anti-feminism sentiment growing within gaming spaces to increase traffic for Breitbart's far-right agenda.
Okay, back to the first half of that because there was something I missed. When I got blindsided by the gay Jewish man is anti-Semitic bomb. Um, I don't know much about Mike Cernovich, but I am reasonably certain that he is not alt-right. Um, because he is a mainstream conservative pundit, it seems like, and a particularly stupid variant of that maybe, but um he's not alt-right, and if you had any evidence of him suggesting that there should be some kind of ethno state, you would have led with it. So I'm reasonably certain that he's not alt-right. He's just an alternative conservative, which is not the same as being alt-right. Alt-right is a particular ideology that usually revolves around softcore white nationalism and or the premise that particular ethnic groups should have states specifically designated to them. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but again, I must point out this fact: anti-feminism is not misogyny because feminism does not have a monopoly on speaking for the rights, interests, or issues of women. And moreover, many women are anti-feminist. Dumbass. Moving on.
Right, okay. Breitbart covered Gamergate extensively, increasing the size of the site's audience that would soon push white supremacy into the mainstream and be instrumental in the election of Donald Trump. Yeah, no, that's total far-reaching bullshit.
Again, Gamergate was mostly about a bunch of fans in the grassroots gaming community noticing that the pushing of ideologies like intersectional feminism was getting in the way of accurate and objective reporting of gaming news and particularly gaming criticism, to the point that a bitch by the name of Zoe Quinn got better reviews on an independent game that she made called Depression Quest by sleeping with various games journalists. So yeah, it's it's not a hatred of women, it's a hatred of meddling moralistic busybodies. And I can almost guarantee you that if this was back in the 90s and it was the hardcore evangelical Christians who were getting in the way of accurate reporting of games and games journalism, there would have been a Gamergate back then too. Because I don't think you could find a human being more hated by the games industry, the fandom of games or the gamer identity than Jack Thompson. and he was the whiny tradcon in the 90s trying to get people to not play video games because, ooh, won't somebody please think of the children? Moving on.
All right. Okay. One 2015 article applauds Gamergate as heroes fighting valiantly against the authoritarian left. Yiannopoulos writes, "Gamers have been there and back again. What Bokhari calls the cultural libertarian revolt against the authoritarian left is now underway. I believe Gamergate bears more responsibility for that tectonic shift than any other event in the past few decades. To put it another way, even the smallest people can change the course of the future. Um, Gamers have done something no one else could. They've done it fiercely and brilliantly, even in the face of bomb threats provoked by their enemies." Okay, so that Washington, D.C. bomb threat turned out pretty awesome for some of us. They have proved that if you just ignore the scary bad guys with the big media platforms who are calling your names, nothing bad happens.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the thing that you're taking I can't speak, exception to is the fact that that he's referring to the authoritarian left. But as I just went over with the example of Jack Thompson, it doesn't matter if the authoritarianism in question is coming from the right or the left. It doesn't matter if it's Jack Thompson or Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn. It doesn't matter if someone is screaming, "Won't somebody please think of the children?" or "Won't somebody please think of the women's and the intersectionalities thereof?" It's still authoritarianism. And yes, Breitbart reported on it mostly because it was largely a left-wing, you know, authoritarianism in this case, because social justice is social justice is to the authoritarian left what the term family values was to the authoritarian right back in the day. And I'm sure the reason why Breitbart is reporting on it has a lot to do with the look at the libs being stupid part of the partisan divide. But that doesn't make Gamergate a conservative viewpoint. It just means that the only people willing to talk about Gamergate at the time were people on the right. And that has less to do with the actual content of Gamergate, and again, speaking as a left-wing Gamergater, than it does with the fact that the right, at least at the time, and at least in some regard, understood that they didn't have the cultural zeitgeist at their back. They didn't have the institutions, and they didn't have the power. And whenever somebody doesn't have the power, they advocate for the powerless. But I'm certain if you flipped it back to the 90s, where it was the evangelical Christians who had the majority of the power, and there was a Gamergate to push back against them, it would be the left-wing outlets that would be covering Gamergate, and the right-wing zeitgeist would be saying, "Oh, those Gamergaters are so very, very far to the left, derp." Yeah, no, it's not. It's just when you're an outsider, other people who consider themselves to be outsiders will occasionally agree with you. And when those forces get power into themselves, a lot of them will go batshit doolally with power, and that's where we get people like Richard Spencer going, "It's not identity politics when we do it, moron." But in any case, such a person is an idiot. Some of us prefer our games just to be completely and totally free of ideological moralizing, just as a general rule. I hate Jack Thompson, and I also hate Anita Sarkeesian. I hate, the Helen Lovejoys of the world, but I also hate the Karens of the world. Except for Karen Strawn, who is awesome, and Karen Murphy, who is one of the best cop characters ever written. But that's a story for a different day. And once again, an attempt by me to get Brainstormer to read more Dresden Files, because everyone should read Dresden Files. Moving on.
Give me time. arguably, nothing bad did happen. Mainstream coverage around this event varied from a critical discussion around misogyny and culture wars on MSNBC to a dismissive interview with Brianna Wu by CNN. Ultimately, threats on women's lives were given a slap on the wrist, and Gamergate faded from public attention.
They were not largely threats, okay? They were largely banter on the internet. Someone saying online, I hope you get raped in a fire, is not tantamount to them going to your house and setting a fire and then proceeding to rape you. They, and just so we're aware, everyone has to deal with stupid edgelords on the internet. Everyone. And everyone gets to be an edgelord on the internet at some point. Because no matter how squeaky clean and unedgy you are, at some point you're going to come across somebody with more prudish sensibilities than you, and they're going to find you edgy. And they're going to misquote or misconstrue something that you say in jest or in anger, and it's going to be seen as a quote unquote threat. But that doesn't mean that you should actually respond to those threats as though they are legitimate threats. If anything, how you deal with a troll is by making fun of them. If you don't like being made fun of, make fun of the people making fun of you. And 9 times out of 10, you'll make them look like the complete spaz they are, and they'll leave you the fuck alone because they realize they can't get under your skin eventually. Or they realize that your arguments are too ironclad and they can't do anything to counter argue with you because they're intellectual midgets who have an unwarranted sense of superiority. Like the fucker that writes this article, funnily enough. Except most internet trolls don't have the backing of, you know, academic institutions and can't spend 3 years writing a faux dissertation on the matter. But what do you suppose that says about where the power is in society at the moment? Could it be perhaps that you who have the moral whip hand and therefore should be held responsible to it by something like Gamergate or something? Moving on.
Sorry. It should also be noted that during the same year, a chlorine bombing attack at Midwest Furfest linked to Nazi radicalization in the furry community put 19 people in the hospital.
Okay, that is nothing to do with Gamergate, and it's nothing to do with white supremacy. That has to do with the kinds of people who would attend a furry convention occasionally being a little bit unstable psychologically.
Well,
And,
I
mm-hmm.
I got nothing. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm not sure why he related. He's again, it's like one of those spider web charts in a conspiracy theory movie. There's one strand that is tied to Gamergate and one strand that goes off to left field and talks about furry radicalization somehow. But but again, it's mostly just some people within the furry community are psychologically unstable. And incidentally, furries tend to be more likely to be the sorts of people who would use Tumblr, which in turn tend to more likely be intersectional feminists. Sorry, that's not us. That's you in this case.
All right. When the story broke, the coverage of the event was met with laughter instead of addressing the seriousness of a fascist terrorist event on domestic soil.
Because calling something fascist or calling something white supremacist without actually being able to demonstrate it is conspiratorial woo, and no one who exists outside of your worldview needs to take any of that shit seriously. And again, it's far more likely that it was just psychologically unstable people who went to a furry convention, which again is more likely to be of the intersectional feminist variety than the hardcore identitarian alt-right variety. Although for as much as people in the actual alt-right call people degenerates, there probably is at least enough projection there that you might maybe kind of have a point, but they're still not related to Gamergate or to some broader conspiracy or to white supremacy in general. It's just essentially psychologically unstable people tend to like weird shit. It's just the nature of the beast. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Indeed, alt-right radicalization within fandom spaces is typically not discussed as a major threat to society, whether it be small.
Because it isn't and can't be demonstrated to be such, and the things you call alt-right have nothing to do with the actual concept of the alt-right. Therefore, you are changing the definitions and labelings of these things, and therefore people don't take your definition seriously. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just I would prefer that we finish the sentence itself for you.
Right, okay. Go for it.
Right. Indeed, alt-right radicalization within fandom spaces is typically not discussed as a major threat to society, whether it be small, zealous communities of gamers, furries, or science fiction writers. Okay, as a writer, I take kind of offense to that, but that's besides the point. Yet, this extremist radicalization is an important variable in explaining how the United States, in particular, experienced an attack on democracy. Motherfuckers, you don't care about democracy.
Okay, and again, it seems very much like you are conflating the alt-right, quote unquote, with populism, and in which case I must insist on clarifying this. The word democracy comes from the ancient Greek demos, which translates to Latin as the word populace. So if you have a problem with grassroots populism of any kind, then you can miss me with all of your moralizing and preening over protecting democracy. And incidentally, it wasn't just in America that populist uprisings happened. Look at Brexit and the election of Boris Johnson in the UK. Look at how the Parliament of the UK basically spent 2 years trying desperately to avoid doing what the people wanted, to the point that it almost led to an uprising. Because, if people can't trust their governments will be turned out on their ear, as a general rule. You morons. Moving forward.
Right. Okay. In early 2021. Okay. I thought there was a period there. That's my bad. This is partially because society still looks at people in fandom communities as inconsequential nerds. This is also because actions of white men are protected. Boys will be boys, as we have always said.
For one thing, many of the people in these counterculture fandom groups are non-white and non-male. And many of them have quote-unquote intersections of identity, as you would put it. And for another thing, what the fuck are you doing now basically demonizing a bunch of geek spaces and nerd spaces and trying to tie them to some sort of vast white supremacist conspiracy? Do you not think that vilifies and demonizes geeks and nerds at all? Or is the issue you're having the fact that we let geeks and nerds off too much, which totally isn't going to return us to the fucking 1950s mode of beating the shit out of nerds for being social outcasts or anything? And incidentally, those of us that are actually nerds don't actually consider the term nerd to be a bad thing. And no, we're not non-consequential. That's the thing we keep trying to get across to you people, because you people, and by that I mean most of Hollywood and most of politics, seem to assume that the people who actually prop up your industries don't matter, to the point that you actually would prefer a different audience. Well, you're not going to get one. Geeks are going to be geeks, and people who feign being geeks for the sake of popularity are flighty and histrionic bastards who don't functionally matter in the grand scheme of things. Moving forward.
Okay. Even now, after a racist, tyrannical leader has risen to power in the White House and the United States has drifted towards fascism at an alarming rate with malicious anti-immigration policies and racist riots led by self-proclaimed neo-Nazis, these fan communities contribute to far-right extremism are still discarded as trolls or man babies stewing in their mother's basement.
Okay, and that to you is too lenient. You're calling them every nasty, belittling thing under the sun, and essentially trying everything you can to invalidate them, and that somehow to you is too lenient because you think that there's some vast conspiracy of like white supremacy in these industries. And again, all this is going to do is make people hate nerds again, man. All this is going to do is return us to the fucking 1950s all over again, and I will not let that happen. I am a nerd. I am proud of being a nerd, and if you want to either invalidate me or inculcate me into some vast conspiracy, you can get fucked, frankly. And also, what is your definition of fascism? What are your definition of any of these buzzwords? Because unless you can actually do basic bitch philosophy and define your fucking terms, I will not be taking any of your terms seriously, other than to rebut them when you use them incorrectly and make wrong-headed assumptions as a result thereof. Dipshit. Moving on.
Right. Okay. The lack of attention given to these groups gave Steve Bannon the perfect opportunity to push the limits of racism, misogyny, and hate long held in America's culture without most people noticing. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Again, many of the people in these fandom countercultures are of different races, are women or other gender minorities. And the reason they oppose these things have nothing to do with hating themselves or internalizing their own self-loathing. It has to do with the fact that ideologies that claim to speak for these people do not actually speak for them. Just because I am gay does not mean I sign on to any given, LGBT activist worldview. Just because a person might be black or Hispanic or what have you doesn't mean they have to support Black Lives Matter. Just because someone is a woman does not mean they can't oppose feminism when feminism is being moralistic and authoritarian. Because, again, identities are not teams, and people do not necessarily have to be puppeteered by some grand overarching identitarian hive mind. There isn't some grand Platonic or Neoplatonic structure of women, capital W, that all women must subscribe to. There isn't some gay hive mind. There isn't some black hive mind. People are individuals, and quite frankly, the ideologies that claim to speak to some sort of overarching hive minds are wrong-headed, illogical, and can get fucked, and also actively impede the enjoyment of fandom spaces. And quite frankly, to me, being a nerd is more important than things that I was born with, because the identities we choose to take on, the identities that reflect something about our nature, is more indicative than our demographics for most people. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay. And in October 2015, as the anti-feminism built up in Gamergate raged on in the pages of Breitbart, the right wing's organized attack on progressive culture was about to enter a new battle. It's not really progressive, honestly.
It wasn't only the right wing. Also, there are plenty of people, myself included. Yeah, hi. on the left who find the moral ideology of social justice or intersectional feminism to be wrong-headed and irrational, and quite frankly destructive, and would very much like it not to impede art or storytelling or entertainment or creativity or any of the above. We want our interests and hobbies to be separate from these moral ideologies. That's what people were rallying against, if anything. Because for as backwards as fundamentalist Christians can be and were, especially during the Satanic Panic, at least most Christians in this day and age understand sometimes you just got to put the Bible away and allow yourself to enjoy other things. Well, feminists and other social justice variations need to understand sometimes you need to just put the ideology away and enjoy things. And more importantly, let other people enjoy those things. Moving on.
Right. Okay. So we're moving on to the next part. I do think after the first couple of paragraphs, we are going to call it and move to the next thing, just because I don't want to spend like super long time on this.
Right.
Like, we consumed. I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the next part of the article. White nationalism targets the Star Wars franchise.
It didn't. Ever.
No, it did not. Hi. How you doing? I didn't like the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I'm primarily Mexican.
Yeah. You want to argue with the inner city mixed race Hispanic? Be my guest.
I would honestly argue that I'm mostly Hispanic. It's a weird thing. Like, I don't want to get into it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That would be longer than the article itself, honestly. But okay.
Yep.
On October 19th, 2015, 4chan trolls and members of 4chan's /poll/board Gamergate forum began the hashtag boycott Star Wars episode 9. No, that's episode 7 hashtag. A self-appointed troll under the username Darkly Enlightened, now suspended, tweeted that the new Star Wars movie hashtag Star Wars 7 barely has any whites in it. Hashtag.
Okay. The thing you have to understand about trolls and 4chan in particular, most people are doing things solely for the lulz. And a lot of people do this kind of shit to make fun of this exact attitude. They're not serious. And more to the point, any boycott of episode 7 was not effective. It only became effective during the lead up to The Last Jedi, because it became very obvious that they were inserting ideology over meritocracy or storytelling. And that, again, in Gamergate and all of the other fandom-oriented sort of offshoots thereof, is the thing people are taking exception to. It's when your moral ideology gets in the way of my ability to enjoy and engage in my hobbies and interests. Moving on.
Right. Actually, did we ever review Last Jedi? No, that was before we actually started this. So
Yeah, it was before we started the podcast.
okay. The tag was meant to direct hate towards people of color cast in the upcoming film The Force Awakens, including Oscar Isaac, Lupita Nyong'o, and John Boyega, with the brunt of the attack focused on Boyega. I never, honestly.
No, this never happens. The majority of the hate, if there could be said to have been any, post Force Awakens, was directed at Rey, because Rey was a Mary Sue and was very obviously meant to be feminist pandering. Most people, and by that I mean most people in the Phantom Menace who I have talked to, say that the movies would have been better if Finn was the main character, who is the person played by John Boyega.
Jinx, by the way. Yeah, like I think you and I, like we've gone on full discussions, like not even on the podcast itself. Sometimes when we talk about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, that it would have made a lot more sense and cooler if Finn was the Jedi.
Yeah. Also, once again, pointing this out for those in the back seats, there are people of color, quote unquote, in the Phantom Menace or in the various anti-social justice fandom communities, because a lot of them don't like ideological pandering and don't agree with the framework of things like Black Lives Matter. Doesn't mean they don't think their own lives matter, and it doesn't mean they hate themselves or some shit. It means the ideologies in question do a shit job of actually understanding the quote unquote experiences of people of color, if you like. Moving on.
Okay. The Twitter event spurred dissent from liberals and progressives expressing outrage against the hashtag. Analytics firm Physiology reported that 60% of the tweets were considered racist, and even then they were simply trying to get people mad. Mashable concluded that the tag wasn't an actual racist movement.
Yes, if it came from 4chan, probably about 6 out of 10 times it will be a joke and someone just trying to be edgy and playing with their anonymity.
Okay.
Moving on.
However, as mainstream coverage was writing off the racist hashtag as the work of trolls, a white supremacist hate group was taking credit for the tag. On October 20th, 2015, Michael Thomas, who operates under the pseudonym Paul Kersey, a noted white nationalist and founder of the blog Stuff Black People Don't Like, published an article claiming credit for the hashtag. This article was published to VDare, a designated hate group by the SPLC. VDare is most noted for using Breitbart to spread anti-immigration sentiment with the goal of achieving public approval for White House advisor Stephen Miller's Trump-era immigration reform.
Okay, well, again, for one thing, these people are unheard of and irrelevant. For another thing, as we just went over, this was not effective in tanking The Force Awakens. The genuine grassroots fandom reaction did not occur until around the time that Last Jedi happened, because it was deliberately wrong-headed and deliberately anti the mythos of Star Wars and centered feminism and other intersectional social justice movements over the quality of storytelling. And that was the problem. So I don't care if some asshole on 4chan made a joke and then some idiot white supremacist took credit for it, because those people were not in any way effective. The people that were effective were the genuine fans who wanted the mythos and the gravitas of their franchise back and wanted the social justice and the moralizing to kindly vacate the premises, please. Moving on.
Right. Okay. However, as mainstream coverage was writing off the sorry, I read that. Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
The day before the hashtag trended, Thompson tweeted on his account at BHWL, no plans to see Star Wars Episode 7. Why no whites, young white males cast in lead roles, hashtag Star Wars Force Awakens.
Okay. Again, that is how deep and how far you have to dig to find someone who actually believes that shit. Most people, if there were any, who were boycotting The Force Awakens, were doing so because they didn't like the fact that Disney erased the expanded universe, because they care more about the merits of the Star Wars franchise and the mythos of the Star Wars franchise than they do about social justice moralizing. And the fact that you are conflating these two things as though they are one and the same is a fundamental failure on your part to accurately assess the situation or to investigate the existing evidence properly. Moving on.
The racist hate was picked up from the main Star Wars hashtag and spread through 4chan and Twitter. And then like there's a photo here of like all of the tweets here.
Yeah, I don't care if some nobody idiot white nationalist thought something or took advantage of an already existing fan phenomena, because the two are not related. And your willingness and inability to see how you are conflating these two things unnecessarily says to me that you are not a reliable source of information on this topic and need to be repeatedly corrected, like Rafiki hitting Simba over the head repeatedly.
Right.
So I will unfortunately be taking the role of Rafiki in this instance, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So after like this little part here, where, like I said, we're gonna call it and then move on to the next stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. On Vidaire, Thompson writes, "Say what you will, getting people to think in the terms a movie is anti-white is a huge positive because it allows them to consider the notion of their own disposition, especially if they've never even thought of this reality before." Again, like I don't care.
Nobody cares about the terms of white, like nobody cares about the racial dispossession of white people. Nobody. And the ones and the few people that actually will occasionally bring it up are usually not people like this. It's usually people who are pointing out the fact that movements like intersectional social justice actively hate on those groups. That doesn't mean they want some sort of white oversoul or white hive mind. It means they would prefer a situation in which nobody had a racial oversoul or a racial hive mind to be prostrated to. And on we go.
Right. Okay. On Twitter, on Twitter, people were considering these white supremacist ideas, including user at Angry Game of Thrones GOT fan, who tweeted that weekend in support of the the hashtag boycott Star Wars 7. People have a point. Hashtag problem. I think this one is just a straight up troll.
Or it might just be, again, the portion of the fandom that was mad that Disney was uncanonizing all of the expanded universe lore.
Well, no, look. Can you see what's on the screen now, or?
No, it froze a little bit ago.
Okay. Well, there's a photo with like the cast, like good guys and bad guys, and like you got Ray Finn. Well, you got Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Oscar Isaac, and the woman who plays Maz. Like, you got those photos, and then you got Andy Serkis. He's not a bad. The guy here is not a bad guy though. The one who gives Poe the information for Luke's place, where Luke's hiding.
Oh, was that Krennic?
No, that's Rogue One.
I keep doing that.
Well, the guy is so inconsequential, so you can't really remember at all. So
yeah, but yeah, it may very well have just been a troll.
Yeah.
Or it may have been somebody who was mad at Disney for uncanonizing the expanded universe.
Yeah, but basically the whole photo is basically multicultural female, black guy, Spanish guy, good guys, all white guys, bad.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I
really think this is a troll right here.
Yeah, I don't think large swaths of the fandom care about race, and nor should they.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, my best friend happens to be Hispanic, so I can't see any reason why anyone would care about anything having to do with race.
Hi, Bad City Stuff.
How are you doing, Bat City Stuff?
Yeah, so like I said, we're cutting it there for that article this week.
Yeah.
And
We
then
will return. We will return to this stupidity already in progress next time.
sometime we should play the game What the Dub. I never heard of that game.
I am unfamiliar with that game. What is that game?
I'm assuming a very nerdy game, and that's coming from a guy who is a nerd. So
I would assume, but it is a field of geekery that I am as yet unfamiliar with. However, I am willing to become more familiar with it. So please explain.
Yeah. So yeah, we're moving on to the next article that Dalton sent me. This is a very stupid one. I mean, yeah. So this is from IndieWire. Idris Elba's Luther isn't authentic because he doesn't have black friends, says BBC executive. This is written by Zach Sharf, published April 14th, 2021.
Yeah. Apparently, Idris Elba is not black enough for the BBC.
Well, no, the show, like, it's like a crime drama. I am really
right, but she's talking about the character who is played by Idris Elba.
Because he doesn't have black friends apparently in the show. Again, I don't know much about Luther, honestly, so I can't exactly really comment.
It was a series of like detective novels, and it got turned into a show. And it was the show that Idris Elba was on when he got like discovered, and he like blew up big.
Okay, I get that. Yeah. Okay, Batsy stuff. It's the game that plays an old, and you fill in the blank, and what they're saying with the most ridiculous answer you can come up with. An old what?
I think he means like an old video clip or something.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's get this on. This is a relatively shorter.
Yeah.
My God. Okay, so BBC diversity chief Miranda. See, I'll say when I'm done reading this. BBC diversity chief Miranda Whalen has stirred up controversy on social media due to a discussion at the digital MIP conference via Entertainment Tonight, in which she said Idris Elba's popular crime series Luther is not authentic when it comes to black storytelling. It's a crime drama.
Also, why is there a diversity a like
diversity
executive a diversity chair in the BBC to begin with?
May I try to provide an answer?
Please.
Oh, movie clip. Yeah, you were right.
Okay. Huzzah.
Yeah, allow me to provide an answer for why there is apparently a diversity chief at the BBC. One, it's the BBC. Two, it's Britain. It's Britain. So,
to be fair to most of Britain does not think like this. It's just the fucking powers that be on the BBC. And the people who write for the fucking like Guardian and shit.
Oh boy, don't get me started on those guys.
Yeah, the Guardian has slowly but surely become the new Mary Sue because the Mary Sue has really dropped the ball on cringe lately.
Yeah, it's really weird. Anyway, yeah, it's just like I'm not surprised that there is a diversity chief, honestly.
I just it irks me that even needs to be a thing. because they're not talking about diversity of thought. If they were talking about diversity of thoughts, then I might have sympathy for the position, because in my opinion, you should always strive for more diversity of thought. But diversity of identity or demographic, no, get fucked.
Yeah.
Ironically, if you just judge people based on their merits, in my experience, you'll wind up with a pretty eclectic group of friends, because ironically, most of my friend group looks more diverse than your average cast of a sitcom in this day and age anyway. Because I mean, yeah, Brainstormer, Corrupt, Mr. E, Just Some Guy. Yeah, it's just basically, if you just give people a chance, just as a general rule, you'll wind up with a pretty interesting cast of characters.
All right. That stuff. I have the game. All we have to do is find a way to talk to each other in some sort of online party, and I can share the screen. From there, you type in the code, and we can play.
Discord.
Yeah, we have links to our Discord in every episode for the last, I don't know how long it's been.
Yeah, join the Discord, Betsy stuff. Join the Discord.
Okay. As Waylon explained, when Luther first came out, everybody loved the fact that Idris Elba was in there, a really strong black character lead, or just a really cool character. We all
Yeah, I don't think his blackness had anything to do with it.
Yeah, I watched. It's been a while since I watched it actually. Like I watched the first episode. Really good from what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious why Idris Elba was picked up immediately after the first couple of seasons of Luther, and he became like the in-demand guy. But again, it had bumfuck nothing to do with him being black. It had to do with the fact that Idris Elba kicks all of the ass as far as acting goes.
Yeah. We all fell in love with him. He didn't, right? But after you got into the second series, you got kind of like, okay, he doesn't have any black friends. He doesn't eat any Caribbean food. This doesn't feel okay. Wow, that is.
Yeah, and this is a black woman saying this, by the way.
Are we sure about that?
I looked into her bio. She is of color, quote unquote.
Okay. That is seriously like that is. You know, if she was white, that it's like everyone get down her throat because that's like the most racist thing you can say.
Yeah, but yeah, she's of color, quote unquote. But it's still one of the most frustrating things I think I've ever heard. God damn it. I don't even remember her name. What the fuck is her name?
Miranda Wayland.
Okay, Ms. Wayland. Black people are not a hive mind, or an oversoul, or a platonic or an or like some kind of avatar of some Lovecraftian nebula or something. You don't have to be you don't have to engage in a particular culture in order to be a particular race. And it's sort of weird in the way she has this framed. It makes it sound like if you're a white person who ate like Caribbean food or something, that would make you more black than Idris Elba. Because in her mind, blackness is a culture or an idea rather than like a racial designation. Yes, catch.
Right.
But yeah, this is the paradox that she's creating here. Ironically, if in her mind, if you're a white guy with a bunch of black friends and you eat Caribbean food, it makes you more black than Luther or Idris Elba or whatever. because apparently the culture is more important than the fucking
Merit?
fact of your actual racial characteristics.
Okay. Wayland continued, it's great having those landmark shows with those key characters, but it's about making sure everything around them, their environment, their culture, the set is absolutely reflective. It will be very much about how can we make sure that this program is authentic in terms of storytelling.
I'm pretty sure 90% of the black people that I know, and again, there's quite a list of them at this point, would call that hysterical pandering, and Mr. E probably would even want to punch this person in the face.
I Well, I don't know that. I think in terms of context, it's stupid what she's saying, but I think you take that context out of it, it's okay because like it's reflective of like, I mean, like it's talking about like the show itself, from what I'm gathering at least.
Right, but Luther wasn't even a black person in the books the show is based on. He's black in the show specifically because Idris Elba is good at his job and got the job based on his merits. They didn't design a character to be black, and he just kind of wound up that way. Cat, move, please.
Yeah, okay. Many Luther fans reacted critically on social media to Wayland's comments. The Telegraph and Daily Mail UK communicator Calvin Robinson wrote on Twitter yesterday, it was implied I'm not black enough because I didn't have any black friends in my photo. Today, BBC's diversity chief says Luther isn't black enough because he doesn't have any black friends. These lazy stereotypes are racist.
Yeah, and it was a black woman who made them. So, funny that.
Yeah. Robinson continued. Great thing about Luther is that his skin color isn't the core of his identity. He's fighting many battles, an example that we're all human, we all struggle, but our ethnicity doesn't always play a part in that. That's diversity, Miranda Wayland equality.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, I believe in a way it's kind of like Luther is kind of a darker, like Sherlock Holmes, in a way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a modern set. Yeah. Although, honestly, I'd put him closer to like a pulp detective than a Sherlock Holmes. I wouldn't.
Again, like it's been a while since I've seen the show, so I really would need to brush up to really have a solid opinion of it.
Yeah, I haven't watched it very much either. I need to fix that.
Yeah. That's me stuff. I'm curious to know y'all's deep intellectual knowledgeable thoughts on the article titled "Does Bruno Mars is Gay?" It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever read.
What?
For the sake of my brain, I'm not gonna cover. I don't think we should cover that.
No, I don't care enough about Bruno Mars to even have an opinion.
It might just be like a joke article, but
it may very well. It sounds like something that the Babylon Bee or the Onion would do.
Yeah.
What, Cat? Come on, there we go.
Fermi Awole. If I said that I'm wrong, I'm sorry. No,
Femi. Adewola is how you say it.
Yeah, Femi Awole.
Adewola.
Alawala. A writer for The Independent and London Economic, reacted to Wayland's comments by writing, "The police turn on Luther every chance they get. How is that not an authentic black character?" Okay.
Okay, Femi Adewola, from what I know of him, because I do kind of follow British politics sometimes, is the kind of person who, in any other circumstance, I could see agreeing with the diversity chief there, because he tends to make a lot of things about race when they're not about race as well, which is why I feel comfortable in saying this. the fact that people turn on Luthor has bumfuck nothing to do with the fact that he's black. It has to do with a convention in the crime genre or the detective genre, whereby the good cop, the uncorruptible cop, the cop that we're supposed to sympathize with, is beset on all sides by bad cops who are corrupt and who blame, shame, and belittle the main character for not being corrupt. And this is a trope that extends from everywhere in the like crime genre, like whether it's like Dirty Harry, whether it's Dick Tracy, whether it's Karen from the Dresden Files again. We actually talked about this, I think, once in an article that was about like how Captain America implies we or how superheroes imply we don't need policing or something. And we talked extensively about the cop genre and how in the cop genre it's sort of implied the majority of cops are negative stereotypes, and the one good cop is exactly that. It's the exception to the rule rather than the rule. So it's not a function of him being black that is what makes Luthor unpopular with his department mates. It's the fact that he's the good cop in the situation, and all the corrupt cops around him don't really like that. Moving on.
Okay, Luthor has aired 20 episodes across 5 series on BBC. Elba and the creative team have plans to reunite for a movie version of Luthor. Oh, neat. And here's the tweet from Calvin Robinson. Yeah, and Femi. That's it.
Huzzah.
Huh.
Next.
Right. Give me a moment. That article is so ridiculous, and I love it so much. I'm going to print it off and frame it in my room just because it makes me giggle. I think he's talking about the Bruno Mars thing.
Yeah, I again, I don't know enough about Bruno Mars to really have an opinion one way or the other. You have to move out of the camera, Cat.
Yeah, I'm setting it up. Give me a second.
Right.
So yeah, so we're kind of a lot quicker than I thought it would be.
Yep.
But yeah, just something that kind of cleanse from that stupid shit. We are going to cover something of Zack Snyder's that will be coming out, I believe, next month.
I think so.
This is Netflix's Army of the Dead. This is made by Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder as a whole, I'm 50-50, honestly.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure I like him very much as a person, and I'm not entirely sure that his obsession with making everything this grandiose, Randian, epic, lends itself well to a lot of different stories. But if you can get him in a project where he can play with that aspect of his creative style and and it works with the material, then it tends to work out pretty good. So
I feel like he just needs someone to tell him no. You know?
yeah, it's the George Lucas syndrome. Somebody just needs to tell him no. Although there's a caveat to that. That someone should not be the studio.
No,
Because
no.
when because when that someone is the studio, we get the bastardization of the Snyderverse that we just got.
No, like he needs. No, he just needs someone who can understand his creative. You know, again, like similar to what
He needs a writing partner is what he needs, and he probably would benefit from being a screenwriter rather than a director, because his aesthetic sensibilities are actually really amazing. It's just they're not always put to the best use in terms of storytelling.
No. Honestly, I was thinking more director of cinematography, but you know.
Yeah. Or somewhere in there. I think director of cinematography might be a little bit too limiting. I think screenwriter works well.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, like he's not. Again, like I've made my thoughts on Zack Snyder pretty clear in the past. I can take it a little bit. I do think how he treats like established properties kind of iffy.
Yeah.
But,
it really is a the material has to work with his style, and they have to mesh well. If
right.
it's not something that he can make mesh well, then it doesn't work.
Right. So I've watched this trailer a few times. I do think this kind of thing works. Well, we'll get more into that as we watch.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we, banana?
We shall banana.
Mr. Ward, how would you like to make $50 million on a warm summer's eve? On a train bound for nowhere, met up with a
Kenny Loggins, right?
Yes. You gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold.
Again, like, say anything you want about Zack Snyder and like his personality or like his merit, but you can't deny the fact that he knows how to make a trailer.
Yes.
I think he actually edited this himself. I believe so.
Okay, that is very impressive. If that is indeed the case, well done, Zach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I'd probably do something like that if I was a director.
Yes, but in a context where most of the time they have somebody else doing the editing, it's at least a refreshing change of pace to have actually someone who can do shit themselves.
Yep. Okay. Also, like, it looks good. Like, again, like that's a staple of Zack Snyder films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shall we?
We shall. Banana.
We were both too tired to sleep, so we took turns of staring out the window at the darkness. The boredom overtook us, and he began to speak. He said, "Son, I've made a life out of reading people's faces."
Yeah, I got nothing. Like, again, like it's really good so far. Like I'm just getting. It's more like guiding me through feelings than anything. Like the first 4 seconds.
Yeah, it's a lot of atmosphere,
which is good.
Yeah, it definitely works, especially if this is going for like the classic horror movie vibe, which seems to be the way they're going.
I think it's a heist movie within a horror movie, which is cool. I always like it. You know me, Don. Like I always.
Yeah, the genre bending is neat and is something that I think lends itself to Zack Snyder. So kudos.
Mm.
Think about it. Everything we did, all those people we saved. Look what it got us. But what if? I can see right away. If just once we did something just for us. Hip hip.
I like how it's kind of building up this world, like, because we know it has zombies in it, obviously, because from the title and all that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. But unlike most stories, it seems, it's kind of like John Wick in the way that it has this very like kind of built-in, lived-in world, and we're only seeing glimpses of it and stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't change the world very much. It's just this is a thing we have to deal with.
Yeah, because I believe that there's like a slight play on a radio newscast kind of earlier in the thing where like Vegas is kind of being used as a holding area for like the zombies,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's regular zombies, then yeah, more than likely humanity wouldn't die off immediately.
Especially not now. What with all of the zombie genre lately.
Well, that and also like if we're talking like the Shamblers, then yeah, like it's just,
Well, I mean, I'd be screwed because disabled, but never mind.
I'm kind of fat, so I'm screwed too.
Huzzah! Neither of us would survive a zombie apocalypse unless they were actual, like, mystically resurrected zombies, and then I'm banishing their asses, and we are saving the world.
Yo, bitch, please! I got weapons on me. I'm good. I'm golden. No, it's the running zombies. Oh no, we're all fucked.
Yeah, doomed.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we?
Yep. Banana.
Play. There's $200 million in the vault beneath the strip, with a 32-hour window to get it out. Find the safe. This should be a simple in and out. It's not too late to go back.
In every heist film they say that simple in and out.
It's never ever happened. It's sort of like how if you're in a movie, never ever go into work 2 weeks before you retire. Like, just take a day off.
The Inside Man. Remember that movie? That went.
Mm-hmm.
That went. I mean, like, it wasn't simple or anything, but it went down.
It's kind of like saying the easiest way in a movie to fuck yourself over entirely is to say, what could possibly go wrong?
Oh my god, I would slap the shit out of that person if they ever said that. Seriously, that's just asking to get killed.
Yep, it's like an invocation of Murphy's Law.
Yeah. All right. Banana?
Banana.
Banana.
What the?
Hold on. Something's up here. I should probably lower the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get to 480p. Okay. Hopefully that should be good. All right. Banana?
Banana.
They're not what you think they are. They're smarter. They're faster. They're organized.
What? We're dead.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm very interested to see how differently they handle these kind of zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Because like that George A. Romero's movie, like the third one, I can't remember what it was called.
Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Night of the Living Dead. What was the third one?
Yeah, it's where the zombies started to get smarter.
I know the one you mean. I just can't.
Yeah,
They're all very similar title wise.
hold on, I'm looking it up real quick.
Yep. To Google, George A. Romero's filmography. They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead. Day of the Dead. Land of the Dead. That's where I think I was looking for.
Okay. Which now makes me think of the Voltaire song of the same name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I'm just very interested because, I did a brief shot where it looked like they had where like two, well, I guess kind of like the alphas, the leaders, the king and queen of these zombies, have like a romantic attachment. I'm just very curious to see how they interact, how similar they are to, if they keep any type of humanity of sorts.
And if they're that smart, is it possible that we might be able to make peace with them at some point or on some level?
I mean, it's a Zack Snyder movie, so probably not.
Well, no, but in like a practical term, that would be my first point of reference. Like if they're that smart, then can they be reasoned with? Because it's the same way with modern day vampire stories. Part of me always just wonders, why do they not just go to a blood bank? Because that way they can get their blood fix and they don't have to hurt anybody. And like that would be my version of a vampire story. Would be in a similar way to Bright did with kind of fantasy creatures. If I ever did a vampire story, it would be a story where vampires and humans coexist because humans invented banking blood, and so now vampires don't need to treat humans like cattle anymore. They just kind of go to the blood bank when they need their fix, and
Right.
Humans and vampires can coexist. Actually, it kind of amazes me they haven't touched on that in What We Do in the Shadows yet. Because goddamn, that show is so funny. Not that I'm surprised, considering the movie is amazing too. But yeah.
All right. Shall we, banana?
We shall banana.
I'll try some.
You got know when to fold them, know when to walk, know when to run. You never count when you're sitting at the table.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say besides like it looks good. My right, I remember people saying that this kind of reminded them like a movie. Don, have you ever heard of like the game series called Dead Rising?
Yes.
Basically that. Like this movie reminds them of that. It definitely has like a video game feel of sorts, I'd say.
I don't know. It reminds me of the trailer in particular kind of reminds me of Zombieland when Zombieland first came out.
Yeah, I can see that. I think it has a little more grit than Zombieland. Not to diss Zombieland or anything, just
No, it's a good movie. The sequel was less good, but the first one was amazing. And if I was in a zombie apocalypse, I would be Columbus, basically.
To be honest, you'd be worse off than Columbus.
Well, obviously, but assuming I survived, the way I survived would be by being OCD as fuck, even more than usual.
Okay. Banana?
Banana.
What is this? It's a goddamn zombie tiger. That's crossing the line.
Okay, I immediately am just on board with this now. Zombie tiger, win.
Yep.
It seems like it'll probably have a decent sense of humor about itself, which is something that I can't say for many Zack Snyder movies. So, yay.
Also, it looks like a pretty good cast, and probably like whatever shit writing they're given, they'll probably do better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like this looks like one of the better works of Zack Snyder. But I'm not like super hyped for it or anything. It looks good.
Yeah. It looks like a funny B horror comedy, which is all it really needs to be. So, yeah, definitely something one could use to Netflix and chill if one were so inclined. So, victory, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I got really nothing to say. I mean, like it looks good. Well, to be honest, we're probably not going to do a review on it or anything.
No. Did the trailer have a release date, by the way, as to when it comes out?
I closed it. Give me a sec to look on Google.
Okay.
But yeah, looks good. May 14th. May 14th.
So not very long.
Nope.
Little less than a month.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was pretty much our week, folks. So with that, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Hi, lobster. Now fuck off.